Hello, Vivian, and welcome to the third channel. Now, today I'm here doing another exciting interview. This series is going to be amazing. And today I'm here with the wonderful producer, Sam Ward.
Hello, hi.
Now, to begin, I would like to begin with all guests I get onto this interview series. How did you get into comedy?
I got into it because I loved watching it and listening to it. Actually, I went on a long car journey with my grandpa, who was actually 90 this year, and he had some old tapes of the Goon Show, which is an absolute classic radio comedy from the 1950s. Peter Sellers and Harry Seacombe and Spike Milligan, and it's just superb. I got really obsessed with the Goons. I bought them all on tape, listened to them endlessly. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that's another one that I listen to so often that I've more or less committed it to memory. And then you start watching what's on TV as well. There was a sort of my both of my parents are vicars, and so they had a tendency to walk in on things I was watching that they didn't like very much, which added a sort of, you know, they'd always come in when I was watching the League of Gentlemen and something really grim and weird was happening, and that would be the thing we see. So there was a sort of a little touch of exciting rebellion about it sometimes as well. So you'd get really into things like that. So I spent most of my teenage years watching comedy and reading the scripts that you could buy. All those scripts were published of everything, and listening to it. And then when I went to university, I sort of started. I had a radio show on the university radio station, and I started making comedy films as well with the Cinematography Society. So you kind of get to, exciting thing I found at university was you get to sort of try things out and see. Oh, I wonder if I'll like doing this. I do like doing this. This maybe will be what I'll try and do when I leave university. So that's what inspired me to do it. And then off I went. I was a runner for a few years, made a lot of cups of tea for people, and a script editor and a researcher and an AP, and I worked in commissioning, and then finally someone let me produce a series, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so.
Well, I really love League of Gentlemen. It's up there with one of the greatest sitcoms, technically sitcom, sort of like a bit weird, and it's one of my favorites and my dad's favorites too. Did you ever listen to the radio show when you were growing up before you found it on the BBC?
Weirdly, with that show, it was the other way around. I saw it on BBC Two, and then went and found the radio show. Same with the Mighty Boosh as well. Likewise, you saw it on TV, and then oh, hang on a minute, this was a radio show, and dig that out as well.
Yeah, because I noticed with comedy, a lot of it for in British comedy anyway. I'm not sure about other comedy, but it all begins with the radio. So like Dad's Army, yes Minister, and I think Yes Prime Minister, but don't quote me on that. And Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy and a lot of others all begin on radio, and then they get a success on TV, right? So with comedy now, if a program was to be on radio, would it be as successful if they transferred it to TV? Would people recognize it and realize how much they loved it, or with all the technology that we've acquired, would it not be as good now, or would it not work as well?
I think in the end, technology is only takes you so far. If you don't have a good script and a funny performer and an excellent story, all the technology in the world isn't going to save you. I'm talking about Avatar. If you take, for example, there's an absolutely wonderful show called Ladhood. And that is on BBC Three, I think, and they're filming a couple more series of that at the moment. That originally was a radio series that Liam Williams wrote, and it's a tremendously good radio series, and it's a wonderful TV show. So that old path of Radio 4 series to TV, it's not trodden so regularly as it was in the 90s, I think. But it still happens, and when it works because, like in Liam's case, the story he's telling is a story we're going to engage with. We're going to find it funny, and we're going to emotionally connect with it, whether we're hearing it or watching it. So yeah, I think that's it. I mean, there are some things. I made a radio show called The Hartlepool Spy a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
And in the course of this radio show, we had a shipwreck, we had riots, we had buildings being burnt to the ground. I mean, we had a scene in which a room full of corpses suddenly start sort of moaning because the air is being sucked into their lungs when the door is opened of this airtight container they're in. Weird things happen in that radio show, and I don't know how many of them would work if we tried to do them on TV. Partly because with the budget of a British comedy program, we ain't doing any 18th century shipwrecks. Let me tell you that. And we can't afford a monkey. So there are things you can do when you're on radio. You just have the imagination of your audience and the skill of your writer and cast, and that's all you have and all you need. I think Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a very good example of that. I think the film is great. I think the TV show was okay, but really the original radio series hasn't been bettered. And with some decent sound effects and some good acting and a great script, radio is just wonderful.
Because I think within my generation, I'm probably, because I feel like I'm trapped in a 16-year-old body when the mind of an 80-year-old. I feel like I'm probably one of the only people in my generation that A, still listens to Radio 4, and B, knows a lot about comedy. And I think that's an issue, I think, with the progress of like social media and that, and comedy is being sort of like stripped away. So like a lot of like children's shows now are being added in YouTubers and internet celebrities, and I think sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. What's your standpoint on the merge in comedy and on TV and in entertainment on the internet?
I think if you're funny, you're funny. And whether you're being funny on your YouTube channel or at an Edinburgh Festival live show or in front of a microphone in a pub downstairs room, it ought not matter. I think when it goes wrong is when someone who is not really funny is given a front row position in a comedy show simply because of their profile. That's usually where it doesn't work. I can't name any examples. I don't have anyone in mind, but I don't have any problem at all with YouTubers or people from social media doing comedy, because there are a lot of very funny people doing that. Essentially, it's another stage, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the only program I've seen that's like properly funny from that was a YouTuber is the TV. I don't know whether you've heard of it, the Million Gethin Complex.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I quite like his because for me personally, I keep up to date with what new programs are being aired on CBC. One, because I'm a TV nerd, buff, whatever you call them these days, and because I want to keep an eye on how children entertainment's moving, because I'm interested in how TV evolves with the era of streaming and the era of doing the way TV's moving. It's like I'm getting a little bit worried that it might shift from the way it is now to more streaming based, so you can watch a whole program in one go. Because a lot of people have said this in the past, but TV, when you watch something on, like, for instance, the Netflix series is 10 episodes and you watch it all in one day, you feel like you've not got anything out. You feel like you're sad now because you missed all that program because you've watched it and then you forget about it quite quickly. Do you feel the same when you watch like like a new comedy on BBC Three, which is online at the moment?
I know what you mean. I tell you what, the trouble I've got is I find it hard to sort of schedule TV into my life.
Yeah.
So there were certain programs. Game of Thrones is a good example. The Mandalorian is another one where when those would be uploaded one a week or two a week, and so you'd go, oh great, it's Monday. That means that Sky Atlantic showed Game of Thrones last night at 2 a.m., which means I can watch it on the catch-up service this evening after I've put Grace to bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I really actually I did enjoy the same with the Mandalorian. I'm sure I can come up with other examples where you are actively like, I've got to wait a week for the next one to find out what happens next. That is a lovely sensation, and it does also like fill your it means the program becomes more than just like one regretful night where you don't get enough sleep and the following morning you have a weird dream about whatever TV show you binged, and you wake up feeling quite grumpy because you didn't get enough sleep, and then you go, oh, I'd love to watch another one. Oh, I finished it already. So I know what you mean about binging. It doesn't always show the show at its best. I watched what was that show, The Killing, right? The Scandinavian detective drama. We went on holiday for a long weekend. We were rained out for the whole weekend, and all we had to watch was 20 episodes of The Killing. And The Killing was a brilliant show. It won all the awards. It was really tremendous. But we ended with nothing else to do in this rainy cottage in rural Ireland. We watched all 20 hours of this show over the course of about 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
And it was kind of exciting. You go, let's watch the next one. But after a while, you started to notice the mechanics of the program would start to show, right? The story structure would start to show, the sleight of hand that they kept on doing. Like, is it this guy who did it? No, it isn't. But maybe it's this guy. No, it wasn't. But could it be this one? And I think if we'd watched it every week, we would not have, the cracks wouldn't have shown quite so easily as they did. When you watch something so intensively, you start to go, law of diminishing returns here. I'm starting to see what you're doing now, and so I'm not enjoying it so much.
Because I quite like it's with the one that annoyed a lot of people, my dad included, was, I don't know if you've seen it, WandaVision on Disney Plus.
I haven't watched it yet. It's on the list. Tell me what happens. No spoilers.
That was one of those where it's like it's like a Marvel film. You watch it all, and you're satisfied. But when it started going into TV form, it would end, and you'd be like, oh, because it would end abruptly. It wouldn't just like have a soft, like, it's going to end. It's just like at any moment now it could end. It's not like in like Line of Duty. It's got the music that's gonna play, and so it signals at any moment now. That the episode's going to end because you can hear the music going.
The program tells you we're coming into land now, guys. We're building to the. So is WandaVision just cuts dead? Does it?
It not in the sense, yes, but then it does. It's like little like credits, but like the credits are 7 minutes long.
What?
So the program's longer than it should be because the credits are 7 minutes.
And I can't remember if Disney Plus is one of the streaming services where it just automatically skips the credits.
No, you have the option to watch the credits or fast forward them because there might be something at the very end of the credits.
Oh, of course, yes, because it's Marvel, so they always put a little thing at the end there. Okay.
But with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is the new one, that's like for my dad because he's one of those people that can just see what's coming next. He sits there and thinks, "Oh, right, there's going to be 7 minutes of advert of credits." And then in Falcon, there's like, I don't know, it's less than 7 minutes. So WandaVision just had shorter episodes than everyone wanted more of, longer credits. Falcon and the Winter Soldier's got longer episodes and shorter credits.
Are there any credit sequences for TV shows where the music is so brilliant that you want to just enjoy the music of the credits?
I think
I've got one. You go first. I've got one now.
I think it's got to be Red Dwarf.
Yep, good choice. Mine is BoJack Horseman.
I love that series.
It's always a race against the Netflix button to give me the credits back. I want to enjoy this song. Tends to be what happens with BoJack. And Girls there's always a good track, very good choice of music for the end credits in that series as well.
Because I think I don't know whether you agree because you're in the industry, so you're the best person to comment on this. But I feel like the credits get overlooked too much. So like you're in the cinema and you're watching, I don't know, Titanic, for instance. I know that was years ago now, but Titanic, for instance, you watch the film and you think, oh, that was a good film, and a lot of people just leave and not bother about the credits, and I think that's a little bit like sad in a way because the only people that I know that get to see the credits when they're watching it in the cinema are the
Yeah.
cleaners. The cleaners are just going there, brushing up on the popcorn, watching the credits.
I would sit through the credits. I'd sit there. Um, no, I'm going to read all these credits. Let's do it. Let's see them all. And the game you can play with yourself is the silliest name. Who can find the silliest name? And you've got
Yeah,
to stick when you found one. That's your name, and whoever you're with might be able to hold out a bit longer and find an even sillier name. So there's a sort of that's a way through.
yeah, yeah. I quite like that because it's funny because you watch it the first time and you don't notice, and then when you rewatch a lot of stuff now, I notice a lot of like people have got like last names that don't really make any sense to their first name.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and going back to what you do is how did you decide like your decision to become a comedy producer or a producer in general?
Comedy is an area of TV. I think that the people who work in it tend to be kind of borderline obsessed with it, and it's an enthusiasm that they're lucky enough to lucky enough to call it our job. And so, like anything, you get obsessed with something usually when you're a kid or when you're a teenager. And so that was me. I I went on a long car journey with my grandpa one year, and he put the Goon Show on. He had some tapes which he used to listen to in the '50s when he was at university, and I absolutely loved it. Spike Milligan and Harry Seacombe and Peter Sellers, and it's very surreal. It's very brilliant, and it's worth listening to if you don't know it because you start to kind of you go, oh, I see where the Pythons got that idea from, you know, and you know, any sketch comedy that has been made in the last 70 years owes something to the Goon Show. It's extraordinary. Anyway, it's brilliant. I got really obsessed with that, as you can tell. I bought all the cassette tapes and listened to them endlessly. I found the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the Pythons and all that old stuff. But also at the time there was things like League of Gentlemen was on TV, and Spaced is wonderful, and Big Train, and the Chris Morris stuff that he was making, the Day to Day and Brass Eye. That was all on TV when I was at school and in sixth form. And you just get really into it. You get really obsessed by it. You talk about it with your friends, and you think about it, and you start noticing what works, and all that's. No, I've never seen anyone do that before. You start to get quite excited by the process of how it's made. I went to university and read English literature and philosophy, which are, interesting enough. But at the time, I was also able to take part in sort of student stuff. So I had a radio show on the university radio station where we did sketches and made little kind of mini comedy radio things. And I made some short films as well with the Cinematography Society, and that gave me a sort of taste for the process of making it, writing it, performing it with other people, or getting other people to do it, and putting it all together, and editing it and having your end product to be proud of. So when I left university, I sent my CV to a lot of companies and managed to get a couple of jobs as a runner. So I made a lot of cups of tea for a couple of years, probably all told. And then off you go. You kind of meet people and work. You get experience. You see how it works on a film set, and see what happens in the development department of a production company, and meet writers and comedians and actors, and put ideas together. And that's sort of here I am. However many years later, 17 years later, I guess.
Yeah. I'm quite like that too. I'm like, it's like I like all genres of TV apart from reality. That's
Have you seen Dead Set?
yeah, shivers down my spines. It's not the greatest bit of telly, but I always whenever I'm talking to someone, well, I say talking, but it's more whispering on at them.
That's right.
Uh, when I'm whispering at someone, I always end up reverting back to comedy, and with the people that know me, I'm somehow I didn't expect this to happen, but I'm one of the people that is very predictable in writing a sitcom. So I'm currently writing my own sitcom, and the people I tell that I'm telling them I'm writing a sitcom, they're like, "Oh, I could see you doing that. I knew you were going to do that." Like they're all very predictable because I'm like I'm downstairs in my now cinema room. Is all my DVDs apart from my Doctor Who ones behind me, are all my DVDs and a lot of them are comedy. So like with Outnumbered, which is my favorite sitcom of all time,
That's
I
great.
I play a game every time I watch because I watch it once a year, and I play a game called Guess the Next Lyric. I try before I watch it, before I click play on the first episode, I try and work out what the lyric is, see if I remember it. I fail, but then sometimes when I know there's a joke coming,
Yeah.
I always say it before they say it. So the joke. Do you ever feel the same when you watch like listen to like the Goon Show and that?
I tell you where it happened to me most recently. It's an anniversary of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
Yeah.
this year. I can't remember which, and so I started the various. They've been replaying old interviews with Douglas Adams and old Radio 4 shows and things like that. And so I was listening to an old book club, Radio 4 book club episode from the year 2000, where there was a
Wow.
long in-depth interview with Douglas Adams, and they played clips from the radio show from the original series.
Mm.
And honestly, I haven't listened to that for it must be 20 years, and yet, as they played those clips, my brain was just spooling. That I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
I was yes, exactly that. So yeah, you watch something often enough and love it hard enough, and it's drilled into your brain, and you'll
Yeah.
never escape it. Not that I'd want to.
And with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a very, I reckon it's a very if I'm using the word correctly, I'm not up with modern slang, but underrated like franchise within now within the people that are growing up now. Because for me personally, the books are all right. I mean, I'm not a big book reader. My shelf might say that I am, but I'm not the biggest book reader. But the radio show was, as you say, fantastic, and I would love to own it on either CD or cassette because I have a hi-fi around the corner. I still own a hi-fi, which is quite unusual for a child my age. Uh, and I think the film bits are funny, but I mean, with a lot of stuff, I'm more biased because I love the BBC. But
Mm.
I always feel that the BBC always produce stuff a little bit better because it's like more of a better adaptation than the films, because the films have to cram a whole story in like an hour gap. Where
Yeah,
for a radio show and a TV show, you've got a little bit longer to do so. And I think when this year I got Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV series on DVD,
right.
and the DVD covers from the BBC are just absolutely stunning. And I think the BBC does a lot of things right when they come to adapt stuff, but when they remake stuff, I just in a different world. Now, going on to remakes, if they ever remade Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the BBC now, who could you see playing playing the main characters?
Oh, I mean, Nick Helm can be Zaphod Beeblebrox.
Mm.
Um, oh, John McMillan from Famalam can be Arthur Dent. Um, 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 ah, ah, I can't. I'm running out of steam already.
It's a very
Uh,
hard question.
It's a hard question. It's a fun question, though, to get your teeth into. What about Ford Prefect? Who would be him? Would you have to change the name of the character? That's the other question. Do we? Because obviously, the joke with the Ford Prefect, he names himself after the dominant life form when he lands, and the Ford Prefect, a car that was hugely popular in, I guess, the 1970s in Britain. No one,
I think you might. I think 'cause that's what I worry about remakes of shows, that they have to rename stuff and change a little
yeah,
bit. I think they would have to if they were aiming it towards a younger demographic, or if they were trying to satisfy the demographic that grew up with it. I reckon you could keep it, but for the BBC, I reckon they would have to change it, which is quite sad thinking about it and quite scary or thinking about it, because with cars now, there's a new one out every other week.
yeah, that's true.
Mm.
You could really go down a rabbit hole with that. He's always Ford Prefect. It would be sacrilege to change his
Yeah,
name. It would be completely unacceptable. I would never ever change any name of any character
yeah.
from,
It,
from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Just to
it's
be clear.
it's
Um,
like if you remade Only Fools and Horses and got rid of Del Boy and changed his name to Terry.
well, what would you have him drive? Is he going to have a
It,
little, what is
it
it,
would
a
just
Robin
have to.
Reliant
It would have
van,
to.
or would
It
you?
would have to drive a unicycle.
I can see this remake is going to be a total disaster.
Yeah,
We should not commission it.
it'd be a disaster on one wheel. Yeah, but remakes just, like, especially in the US, they worry me. But that leads me on to a very good point with Cleaner. Now, Cleaner is a remake of the German program, which I'm not going to pronounce the German pronunciation, but
Neither am I. Neither am I. Don't
it
worry.
converts to Crime Scene Cleaner.
Yeah.
Jamie Does TV is a brilliant YouTuber. She asked the question: does Cleaner, if you know, because I don't know whether you will know, does it stay true to the original, or is it based off that idea?
It stays true to the original. Greg has adapted the scripts himself. He's written new versions of the German episodes, and he's taken quite, he's made his own thing out of it.
Yeah,
So it's not like line for line translation of the German show.
yeah,
He's made it his own, whilst I think staying true to the character that he's, the English version of the German character that he's playing. And I think a fan of the German series would go, "Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a bit like that episode," but they won't go, "Oh, it's just word for word remade the
yeah,
episode. It's its own thing." I think with adaptations and remakes and so on, I think we were talking earlier about taking something from a book or to a radio show to a
yeah,
TV series to a film. I'm all for that, so long as everybody admits and acknowledges that each new version of the thing is its own thing. It's
yeah.
not so. Uh, I don't know if you've ever read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, on
Oh
which
yeah,
Blade Runner was based.
yeah,
You read the film and watch the book, other way around. But you'll notice they're different. They
yeah,
have similar themes, similar characters. They're set in a similar world, but there are significant differences where it would work really well in a book to do this thing, and it would work really well in a film to do this other thing. They're interpretations of the same thing, rather than. Do you see what I mean? And
yeah,
another good example is probably One Flew Over the Cuckoo's
yeah,
Nest, which is an extraordinary book and an amazing film, and they're different enough whilst telling the same story that you don't go, "Well, it's not as good as the book." You
yeah,
don't need to, because it's different. It's not pretending to be the book. It's trying to do its own thing. So that's my usually when something doesn't work, I don't really like. For example, I don't like the film of Watchmen,
yeah,
because it felt weirdly slavish to the comic, whilst, and in so doing it somehow stripped all the subtlety and nuance and satire out of the comic strip, and it just became a quite nasty film. And I would rather someone had gone, what's, as they did with the TV
yeah,
series. You see, the TV series is not a page by page remake of the graphic novel. It's how do we make a TV show? The rules are different. The creative rules are different with a TV show to a comic book. So how are we going to make this the best TV show whilst staying faithful to its source material? Um, that's my philosophy of remakes,
but with
adaptations.
yeah, with I think for me personally, adaptations are a different. I think they're a different ballpark. When you look at the scale of things, I think adaptations are a different ballpark to remakes. And remakes for me, it's like the common thing that everyone talks about is UK shows converted to America, and then American shows converted to the UK. So, for instance, that 70s show that I'm not the hugest fan of, I stopped watching halfway through. It got a little bit like odd and not like the greatest show, because like the character that you rooted for just ended up hating each other. Is that when that remade over here, that remade after only one series aired in America, same people that did the original, as in like the same production company, the same writers, but they did it word for word and just changed the odd word to make it more UK based, which fails. It's like with the IT Crowd,
Hmm.
that was a huge success in the UK, and then remade twice in America, failed both occasions. And I think there's a 2018 version they were working on, but then that went dead silent in the waters. But with that, it's had, with a lot of American ones, they've always got one cast member returning to play the character, but
Hmm.
not always happy with it. So in the documentary series for Red Dwarf, the first 3 million years, and in every other conversation Llewellyn has ever had about the US Red Dwarf, he didn't like it because he didn't like being there as the android that the name that escaped me, Crichton. That's it.
Yeah.
I remember now, and I think remakes are too often. Now, Cleaner is I think, a remake that doesn't take it from a source material that speaks English, so it's like you want more freedom to it. Because I don't know if you do know, but I don't think Greg Davis speaks German at all. If you know,
I don't believe that he does.
no, so,
He hasn't spoken any German to me.
mm,
I can say
yeah,
that. Yes, you're right. I think that gives us a certain freedom.
yeah,
The German series is great. It's really good. I've watched it and I think it's tremendous. And I think also Greg is brilliant and has his own comic voice. And so what you have here is, you have a setting and a character and a format that now Greg has made his own.
yeah,
And I don't, I hope someone who's a fan of the German series will like our version too. I hope they'll also see that they're different,
mm,
and they can exist. There's room for everything to
yeah,
to
yeah,
exist side by side. There's no. I think talking about American to British and British to American, I think where it works again, it's kind of what I said earlier. I think like accept that something is different,
mm,
and work out what what their that version of it is. So the American studio system allows for great teams of comedy writers and huge casts and 20 episodes a series. And
yeah,
so when Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant took The Office to America, what you end up with is it's a masterpiece. The American Office is absolutely brilliant. That doesn't in any way diminish the British Office, although they made whatever 2 series and a Christmas special in the UK, and they made 100 and something episodes in America.
mm,
That's because the machine in America allows that. And the genius of the American Office, I think, is that it is its own thing. The characters are different, right?
yeah,
Steve Carroll is playing a different character to Ricky, and yet you go, yeah, the DNA is here. There's continuity here, but it's not a slavish and therefore disappointing remake.
mm,
What would be the point of that?
yeah.
It's its own new thing, that needn't feel like it's in direct competition with the original source material.
Yeah, but with the US office, which I've noticed, and I've seen it, because the philosophy in my head is that you watch it, you can't say it's horrible until you've seen it. You have to watch at least a series before you can say anything. But what it is that with the US office and a lot of other US remakes, the first series starts normally script to script, and then once it gets fan base and then picked up, then they move on to their own thing. But with the US office, the only bit that sort of confuses me is when they try and link the two universes together. So there's a few episodes where Ricky Gervais and Steve Carell meet each other in a
Yeah,
lift, and
yeah,
then there's another one where Steve Carell has left, and then Ricky Gervais they tried to audition for the job,
yeah. I
and
remember.
Catherine Tate's in it, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
British people are in it,
You
but it
feel like it's like Back to the Future. Like you should never meet your former self, because if you do, the whole space-time continuum will collapse and
yeah.
disaster. Never cross the streams, as they'd say in Ghostbusters.
Mm,
No, I didn't mind that. I thought that kind of worked, but it does, as a British viewer. There's no question that takes you out. It has to, because you go, oh look, it's Brent from the thing we watched in
Yeah.
2000 on BBC Two. What's he doing in this big American show? I think for an American audience, the majority of whom probably have never seen the British Office,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have had that effect. They would have I'd be very interested to talk to someone in the audience in the US who maybe vaguely knew that the Office was a remake
Yeah.
of a British show, but never seen it and didn't know. David Brent is such an iconic part of sort of pop culture in the UK, and so when he appears, that can't help but take you out of it.
Yeah.
But I do wonder. We'll never know. We can't know, because
No.
we're wired to recognize Brent as soon as he
Yeah.
appears. That's Brent.
Yeah, but I think David Brent's more popular because the only reason why I think that is because they had the film Brent Life on the Road, which sort of changes it so like more people know what it is. But when you watch a lot of American people talking generally, when they say, "Oh, the Office," they call it the Office, which I think they should because on when you look at it on Netflix in the UK at least, it's called it puts in brackets U.S
Yeah.
close brackets, so you know that it's different. But they call it the Office. So when you try and talk, I've never spoken to American about this. I've never really spoken to many Americans. But when you talk to them, you probably be on about the Office, and they'll probably have no idea what you're on about. Because you'll cross platforms, as you said. But that's what happens with a lot of remakes, and then you have the
Well,
reboots.
you should find
Yeah,
an American YouTuber who's a fan of comedy, and you should have this conversation with them,
yeah,
and see where the cultural where your common touch points are, and
yeah.
where those differences are, and that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it would be because I googled it the other day. There's a program in America called Superstore. Now I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I've only ever seen like a little clip of it, and it reminds me of Trolleyed, which is a Sky One
Yeah.
comedy. And when you Google it, it does pop up as someone has asked a question, and that's what's quite interesting that when you look at something, the style might be the same, but the humor is vastly different. It's the same with Cleaner. The German humor would be vastly different to British humor, but with the German Cleaner, which I've noticed upon more research into the German version and watching the actual German version, that there's a brilliant streaming service in America, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name. But what it does is it lets you watch programs from around the world with the ginormous subtitles you've ever seen. So they're so big and so clear, you can watch it and you understand that they've dropped an ice cream cone and that the ice cream's not made correctly, and then someone's going to be upset at the end of it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, you spend so long reading the subtitles, you're not watching what's happening
Yeah.
in front of your eyes. Have you seen a Russian movie called it's called Night Watch, I think, something like that.
No, I
They
don't think I've seen that.
it's okay. It was a sort of cult classic. I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. Maybe longer, maybe 15 years ago. Anyway, the reason I bring it up is because they did great things with subtitles. They animated their subtitles. So, for example, if there were subtitles on the screen when someone was swimming in a swimming pool, the words would dissolve in the water.
Wow.
And they did various little tricks like
Yeah.
that, embed the subtitles into the picture,
Mm.
and it really worked.
Yeah.
I'm sort of surprised. I was going to say I was surprised more people don't do it, but when you realize how much work that would be, at the end, have you got any money in your budget left for someone to animate all the subtitles? Probably not.
Subtitles are a little bit of a nightmare. There was a BBC Four comic drama where it was Norwegian and English. So what it was my parents loved it. I don't think I've ever seen it, but seen clips of it, and it's where they would all speak Norwegian, and then they would walk into a boardroom to discuss the crime even more about how they're going to solve it. They walk into the room, but the subtitles are still going in Norwegian, in English. To translate Norwegian, they walk into the room and then they just suddenly start speaking perfectly healthy English in like the perfect, because there's English people in the room, so they just speak clear English.
And does the subtitles switch?
No, they still go on. The subtitles are still there in English.
You're supposed to now. We do this. I have a 5-year-old daughter. We put the subtitles on when she's watching CBeebies or kids shows, and the idea is, in theory, that it helps her learning how to read. I don't know if it works, but it makes us feel slightly less guilty about how much TV she watches.
I read I saw something somewhere. I think it was a news round, because they're always reliable with their children media. But they said on it that there's a statistic that you learn, your brain processes more words if you read the subtitles whilst watching a program. So, but the only time I think it doesn't work in a sense of, if you don't need the subtitles for any reason, for if you're like deaf or something, you need the subtitles and it works. But in my opinion, I don't think it works when they have like the music playing, when the words just say music.
Yeah, that doesn't help, does it?
I don't think that works the greatest. But going back to Cleaner, what is the synopsis for the UK version? If you can.
The Cleaner is a series about a crime scene cleaner called Wiki, played by Greg, who's also written the episodes. Every episode, he arrives at a different scene to clean up. So after the police have been and taken the body away and done their investigations, you're left with a pool of blood or some grisly, remnants and it's the crime scene cleaner who has to come and mop up afterwards. Although they don't use a mop, you might be interested to hear. And so every episode sees Greg's character go to a different scene, and while he's cleaning up, he meets a different person. It might be the homeowner, it might be someone who knows the victim or the neighbor, or it might even be the murderer who's come back, returned to the scene of the crime. And that is the story of the week. So each episode is its own story, its own location with its own guest star.
Yeah,
and you have Helena Bonham Carter and David Mitchell, Leighton Williams, who's in Everyone's Talking About Jamie, and Ruth Madley, who's a brilliant actor. How many names have I said?
Quite a few.
And who else have we got? Stephanie Cole, and then another TBC yet to be announced co-star for the 6th episode. So each episode is a really good opportunity for Greg and the co-star to establish a two-hander comic relationship on screen and tell one story. So I'm very excited about it.
And for Greg's outfit, as we've seen on the British Comedy Guide website, which is my favorite website of all time, and I was so glad when I got added to the website because of my last interview. But does Greg wear the same tash as the German original, or does he remove the tash?
Here he is. I'm looking at this is we shot a little bit before Christmas. There's Greg.
There he is.
That has been released on the BBC press office. If anyone wants a closer look at Greg in his blue overalls, There's not a strong tash there, not a strong Teutonic German tash. It's more of a kind of British sort of, what would you describe that as? A sort of stubbly, beardy kind of.
New goatee, half a goatee.
Yeah, so that's the look of the character for you.
Yeah, and I'm quite, for me personally, I don't know how it is for my viewers, but I'm quite excited to see how Greg does this, because in Taskmaster, Greg's more of the trying to be all scary, but in Man Down and Cuckoo, which are fantastic series that Greg, I think, wrote Cuckoo. I definitely know he wrote Man Down, but he's got, is he more like his Taskmaster self, or is he more like his Cuckoo and Man Down self? If you've seen Cuckoo or Man Down,
I've seen Cuckoo and Man Down. It's a new character.
yeah.
So he's I wouldn't, you know, you'll find that the character wiki looks hauntingly similar to the dad in Cuckoo and the teacher in Man Down and the host of Taskmaster. They have a similar physical appearance, but the performance, the character's different.
Yeah, which would be nice, because it's like, with people like Greg that doesn't do vastly a range of things, because he's in a few other shows, but it's nice to see him like portray a different type of character, because a lot of actors, like David Jason did a brilliant series about his life and on Gold, which is another fantastic channel. It's like, it's good to see him like branch out to different areas and he's not being typecasted like what David Jason tried to do. So David Jason for years was typecasted and then tried to helm his own sitcom like Only Fun and Horses, and then he went on to successful in Touch of Frost, Darlie Buds and May, and that war film that never sticks in my brain. Every time I see it, I forget the name like 2 seconds later. And it's quite nice. And it with Greg, does he seem like he's enjoying the process? If you've ever seen him on set, does he look like he's enjoying himself?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I'm really enjoying working with Greg. He's a very funny and talented man, very positive and enthusiastic, and we're having a lovely time so far. Yeah, I think he seems to be enjoying himself.
Yeah, and now coming more down to Earth. We are on Earth, but coming more down to you. How long, if you can remember, how long have you been doing the job for, like the producing job?
I have been, the first thing I produced was a series called Threesome that was on Comedy Central, and that must have been 2011. So that means 10 years.
Wow. That's
and obviously I was working in television for the previous however many years, being a runner and a script editor. I worked in commissioning. I was at Sky actually when we commissioned Trolleyed, for example. So when you mentioned that brought back a few memories. But I've been actually producing shows for probably about 10 years.
Yeah, I really do like Trolleyed. I mean, it's like a lot of programs that are really nice, and it's like Trolleyed is like Trolleyed and Detectorists are two of like the programs
They're great, aren't they?
down. And if you have any worries, I don't know whether anyone does, you just sit down and forget all your worries with Trolleyed. I really love Margaret, and when she pops into other programs, I'm like really happy, unless the program's not the greatest program in the world, such as I was quite glad when Margaret left Ackley Bridge, because personally, I don't like Ackley Bridge.
Trolleyed was fun because when we set it up, I say we, I was at the channel. It was Asher Taller's company Rough Cut that made it. They built that whole supermarket in an empty warehouse in Bristol, and they invented, obviously Valco was invented, all that branding and everything had to look kind of real. And so when I visited set when they were filming the first series, you arrive in your car in this kind of industrial wasteland with nothing anywhere. And you go into a great big warehouse that looks like it might be in a Guy Ritchie movie, and you wonder, is this finally where I get killed by gangsters? And then you open a door and you step into a complete and functioning supermarket with shelves stretching into the distance, full size. I mean, it really was spectacular what they did there, and so that set was really something when I saw it for the first time. And the other nice thing about Trolleyed was Mark Addy was brilliant on the meat counter,
Yeah.
but that was on Sky One just at the time at which the first series of Game of Thrones was starting on Sky Atlantic.
Yeah.
So you could take your pick: Mark Addy as the king of Westeros, or Mark Addy as the king of the meat counter. He was he was across the network.
Wow. Yeah, it'd be quite odd if you're watching Game of Thrones and all you hear is Falco says you right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all those feasts at Game of Thrones, you did wonder who's providing all the meat here. That's Valco, isn't it?
Margaret gave it to the king.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, but speaking of trolling, which we'll move on to now, is what if you've seen the program after visiting the set, if you've seen it, who's your favorite character? Because I, as I've stated earlier, is Margaret, because Margaret is clueless, funny, and clueless.
I think you've got it there. I'm trying to remember. I did really like Mark and Nick Blood's characters on the meat counter. I thought they were a funny double act. They seem to have stuck in my mind since we made series one. So I'm going to say them. I'll say those two.
Could you see Trolley come back in any sort of sense, not just in a TV realm? Could you see a film of Trolley? Because like Mrs. Brown Boys had Mrs. Brown Boys, that movie. Could you see like a Trolley the movie?
I don't know, to be honest. That's a good question. You should ask Asha Talla from Rough Cut, or someone from Sky. They'd be able to have a view on that. But funny you mentioned Mrs. Brown's Boys, the movie. My wife watched The Time Traveler's Wife last night.
Oh yeah,
A very sad and emotional high concept film. I don't know if you've seen it.
yeah.
And it leaves on this incredibly sort of downer moment, at the end of the film. There, it's really like moving and emotional and all that. And then, as it always happens on Netflix, the credits get shrunk, and then it suggests what you might want to watch. Maybe you want to watch Mrs. Brown's Boys, that movie, which is like, why did the algorithm think we'd want to go from The Time Traveler's Wife to Mrs. Brown's Boys?
Well,
I don't know. I mean, maybe the algorithm's onto something. Maybe that's just what we needed.
the film was added yesterday, so I think I was watching the worst program on earth, but I have to finish it because I'm that type of person. I was watching, well, I was looking at my phone whilst it was on because I didn't want to watch it. It was Riverdale, and after the credits started rolling, it wanted me to watch Mrs. Brown Boys the movie. So I thought,
Right. Okay. So this is like a national blitz campaign. The algorithm's out for all of us.
So why not? Because I've seen it twice before, and it's a really good movie, because with every sitcom that transfers to film, Mrs. Brown's Boys is like a different world altogether. Because that has like meta humor. It keeps in the comedy of the TV series with the outtakes, and the fact that it's like borderline, and she knows she's in a film, but because it's called the movie, she knows she's in a movie. But for Trolleyed, if that was ever made into a film, I think the concept would be it's like they've lost Margaret, and they have to try and find Margaret, and they've got wanted posters everywhere, and you see like the array of different characters walking out with like meat, or with pharmaceuticals, because she worked at the pharmaceutical desk for quite a while. So that would just be like a bizarre concept of lost of an old lady because the scheme's gone wrong.
Yeah.
That would be quite funny.
I think the Inbetweeners, the second Inbetweeners movie, is a really good example of a sitcom that's made a brilliant film.
Yeah.
I'm banging on another example of when you go, okay, we're not just going to make a sitcom that's really long. We're going to make a movie that has these characters in it, and that's why the Inbetweeners 2, and in particular, I think the scale of it, the kind of the road trip feel. It was a film. They were making a film which just happened to have those characters in it, and it's great.
Yeah, because I quite like the Are You Being Served film, because a lot of them work, some of them don't, but I don't know many ones that didn't really work, but a lot of them do. But with your job, which
Hmm.
comedians would you want to work with or are working with, but you can't say, but you do just want to sneak that in now?
um, I am thrilled. Absolutely, this is a kind of guff that people say on behind the scenes interviews, but I really am delighted to be working with Greg at the moment,
Yeah,
and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I think.
yeah. What other comedians do you like aspire to or like enough to want to see them in a project that you know that's like either being piloted at the moment or being written? Like any like comedians that you know of that you want to see in like a program that you want to either watch or you would like to see them in.
There are some guys up in Newcastle, which is where I was born and grew up, and they've been making uh, short comedy sketches under the name of Metroland,
Yeah.
and I think they're great. I'd love to see more from them
Mm,
on a bigger scale.
yeah.
So have a look, Metroland, they're called.
Yeah.
Very sort of surreal and kind of strange stuff from the northeast of England. I think it's great.
Yeah, because there's a lot of YouTube groups like sketch comedy groups that would really suit TV. Now, there's one that I might butcher the name here, Fall Arms and Hog, which is an Irish
Oh, I know. Yeah,
comedy group that you could buy a €40 a memory stick with like 4 shows on it. If you don't like it, you can delete the shows if you want.
it's
Uh,
a perfectly good memory stick.
yeah, but they developed their own sitcom called Squatters,
Right.
and I loved it, and I would love to see that on TV. And I can see them as starring in sitcoms. And if you could remake any sitcom with them in it, what sitcom would you remake and why?
I don't know. That's a really good question. What about you? Are
Uh,
you sort of fantasy casting Foil Arms and Hog into another series?
well, I could see them being the comic relief characters in EastEnders, just in the background,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just
Yeah,
just every so often. Every so often you hear because one of the sketches you do they have a woman and then they have the son Oshin, which is an Irish name, and you could just hear in the background of the scene yelling at Oshin to come down the stairs whilst in someone else's house because the walls must be thin in EastEnders land. But I'm
have you-
not really a sub fan. But I can see them. I can see them as their own. In I can see Squatters being a BBC um Saturday night sit. Yeah, and then going back to comedian. Well, I wouldn't say. I'll say comedy actress for this next one was what was it? Because I when I did my research on the British Comedy Guide website because where else would I look for information on anything on planet Earth to do with comedy? What was it like working on Mandy? Because Mandy was a BBC Two program that was absolutely hilarious from start till finish.
Oh, I'm really glad you liked it. Mandy was just tremendous. It was really, really fun to make from start to finish. I know Diane because I worked on one of the Philomena Kunk shows, Kunk on Shakespeare. So I got to know Diane when I was making that,
Yeah,
and then we sort of she came up with this character Mandy, and we tinkered with the script that she wrote and submitted it, made the pilot, and then got to make the series. And so that was what was really exciting about Mandy was the budget was low, and that meant that we had to be creative. You know,
yeah,
you can't throw money at a problem if you haven't got much money to throw. So making that was really fun, and Diane is a genius as a writer and a performer. It's just it was sort of silly nonsense, and we were all having a lovely time. I think is probably the best way to describe it. We had a small cast of people who reappeared in every episode
yeah,
playing different characters. So there was a sort of sense of camaraderie there. We had some quite fun guest stars coming on.
yeah.
We did sort of I don't know if you remember the scene in Tony Way's episode where there's a shootout at a wedding.
Yeah.
That was one of the most enjoyable working days of my career so far, in that room with all those guns going off and hiding under a table with the stunt coordinator. It was great. So yeah, I was very happy with that show, how it turned out, and very proud to have had anything to do with it.
Yeah, and I quite like the last episode. Now, how was it to film this for viewers watching this? This is a spoiler warning for the very last bit of Mandy. If you haven't seen it, I think it's still on the BBC iPlayer. Watch it because it's a good show. But what was it like filming the coffin scene?
Well, so we did that in the drama studio of a secondary school that we were using as a location.
Yeah.
We chose that room because we could black it out completely.
Yeah.
And we had a coffin, I think, or maybe it was a mock-up of a coffin that the art department built for us. I can't remember, which Diane lay in, and then we had a camera just pointing straight down.
Yeah.
And then we took the side off to get the side-on angles. So she wasn't really in a coffin. She had air to breathe and didn't have to feel claustrophobic.
Yeah. But
it looks good though, doesn't it? It does look like she's in the coffin.
It does. It really does, and it's quite. And I think with all Diana Morgan's programs, regardless whether she's a star or not, she is always like the rising star. So I don't know whether you've seen Sky One's Frayed, which is sitcom. Diana Morgan in that as well. She's fantastic in that. But I feel like in that and in Mandy, it's sort of like a similar style of character. So like Diana Morgan's playing another person that always chews chewing gum and always has the same sort of thing. But it like still works really well and still feels unique because she was also in the amazing Motherland, which is incredible.
Yeah.
If you've not seen it.
It's great.
Yeah, and she plays a really good part in that. And she's one of those mothers that's like really like calm and relaxed. So if you like get cut a little bit with your fingers, like, oh, you'll just see that, and then she just walks in and grabs it. And what do you feel? Is it like do you feel like she's like a dedicated actor or serious to get the job done, or is she like more like, oh, goosey Lucy and doesn't mind if she messes up a line, doesn't get angry?
No, she's very very good and conscientious actor who works, at her craft and gets it right. With Mandy, we had lots of opportunities to try things out, and because Diane had written it, she's starring in it, and she was directing it. So if an idea came to us or to her, she would just do it, and then we'd go to the edit, and so there was a bit of loosey goosiness there that we had the chance to try things out, new lines and stuff. But for the most part, it's what the finished show pretty much reflects the script that she'd written. So there's a precision to what she does that I think is part of what makes it so good.
Now with the modern era of comedy and the way everything's being viewed, it's all streamed. Now, what program that never got a DVD release, if you still watch DVDs? Because I know I still watch DVDs, VHSs, and then normal TV. I think they're the only medias you can watch it in. And
I don't miss VHS, by the way. I miss DVDs a bit, but I don't really miss VHS. They didn't bring much to the table, did they?
Well, no, but it's like nice to watch like The Vicar of Dibley in its original VHS format.
Sure.
Yeah, which I've got around the corner from me. But what program would you put onto DVD, and what would be the bonus features?
Oh, that's a good question. Trying to think of something really obscure that I remember from when I was a kid, and I'm failing. I really like. The trouble is, most of these shows now have been released on DVD, but things like Ripping Yarns, for example, this I'm afraid would have been my answer. had it not already existed. But Ripping Yarns was a Michael Palin series, if you don't know. That I don't know when they made it, possibly the 1980s, maybe, or 70s.
I think it was just after Flying Circus.
Right. Okay. And I had the scripts long before I saw the show, because it wasn't available. And so I sort of was reading it and enjoying it and thinking, God, I'd love to see this show one day. And then, to my delight, it was released on DVD. So of course I got it, and it was filmed single camera out on location, but then they had a laugh track on it, because in those days everything had a laugh track.
Yeah.
And one of the DVD extras was the option to turn the laugh track off if you wanted on certain episodes.
That
So
would be freaky.
so that was a really interesting and useful DVD extra, really, because it lets you, like, laugh tracks are controversial. I've made studio sitcoms in front of a live audience, and you need a laugh track. It's not, people call it canned laughter. It's not. It's always a real audience reacting honestly to what they're watching. If somebody's laughing, they find it funny, and I think in certain kinds of comedy, particularly studio sitcom, that gives energy to the performers on the stage. There's a sense of, I think Mrs. Brown's Boys is clever in the way it reveals the audience in the opening titles. I think that's very smart.
Yeah, that is quite genius.
Because it says everybody's with us now. You're in the room with this audience. The laugh track used badly can distance someone at home, because they feel a bit like, well, why are they all laughing?
Yeah.
You feel like they've got something to prove. Whereas if you can create, as they do in those titles of Mrs. Brown's, the sense that you on your sofa are part of the audience in the room, then the laughter will carry you along. Anyway, I'm rambling. With Ripping Yarns, it was quite interesting because you could decide, am I just because a lot of it, at the time particularly, a lot of people were snobs about laughter tracks, like, oh no, it's not funny at all with a laugh track. And so with the Ripping Yarns, you could try it both ways, decide what you like.
Yeah.
And then there's another one on Chris Morris's sketch series Jam. Have you seen Jam?
Yes.
So the DVD extra on that is almost the opposite. So Jam obviously is really weird and dark and sort of sinister, and has all this atmospheric kind of drone music and electronica and stuff playing to create a mood that's almost deliberately not for laughing. And then they had a sketch where, do you remember, it's a mother whose baby seems to have died, and she hires a plumber to try and repair the baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the darkest subject you can come up with for a sketch. The DVD extra for that sketch was they played it in front of their cast and crew screening, and they recorded the laughter in the theatre. And so you can watch that sketch with a laugh track, and suddenly it becomes much, much easier to laugh at when you can hear everybody else in the room laughing at the jokes. You stop feeling so darked out by the, essentially this is a big funny sketch about a dead baby. Anyway, there's I do miss DVD extras, I won't lie.
Yeah. And then for me, just coming away from it for a few seconds, is that Lee Mack's sitcom Not Going Out is, I think, one of the few that Red Dwarf, Dave's Red Dwarf and Lee Mack's Not Going Out. I think the only program that I can think of that still retain the studio, well, technically studio audience for Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf has a thing where it's like, if you have to film on location, they'll get the audience to watch it.
Yeah.
And then they'll add that in, because it's like they want the laugh to stay consistent, which works really well. And Lee Max works well. But Mrs. Brown, in its entire history, when you watch it back, it's very different to the way you know it now. Now, RTE is the Irish network that it used to be on. So it used to be, so Brendan O'Carroll wrote the books. No, he made the radio series, because he just like rambled on and made it all up. Made the radio series. Was supposed to get someone else to play Mrs. Brown, but then she didn't show up, so he had to fill in for her. Then he wrote the books. Then he made a film called Agnes Brown that was entirely different to what we know now. And then when they made the series, which is just called Mrs. Brown, the original series that I have on DVD, that's if you reuse a lot, it's got a lot of the material that's used in the BBC series, but a lot of it without no audience is there, and bits have been cut and this, that, and the other, and characters. It's like bloke that plays Buster plays a character called Simon, and all characters are like swapped around this, that, the other, and then they did another version after that, which was a sequel series called Mrs. Brown, where you got to meet Jacko, which is a bit character that you never met before, and Peter Kay was in it. Really
Hmm.
randomly, Peter Kay was just in it, and
Right.
it's quite unusual, but it shows how Mr. Brown works better with an audience rather than without the audience. And I quite like that they've kept that material around. But for a program that I would like to see come on DVD that probably won't ever, I don't know whether it might be the Likely Lads, which was the not the spin off, which was when they all came in colour, the black and white version, and then Dixon of Doc Green. But
Oh,
I did hear the Dixon of Doc Green. Not a lot of it's stable.
oh, that's interesting. I wonder whether it fell victim to the same policy that Doctor Who did, where they were reusing tapes.
Yeah, a lot of it's like missing or lost, or they've
Yeah.
got to it, but it's in too late. Cause they did it was all over the news a lot when they found old episodes of Morecambe and Wise, but they got there and they found the Doctor Who that was perfectly sealed and safe, but the Morecambe and Wise had just the moment they got there, it only just like gone stale and unusable.
Right, right. I see.
Yeah, but have you ever seen the Like Lads?
I haven't actually. Okay.
Now our last question is, if you had to give advice to anyone that wanted to either go into TV or producing, what would you say to them?
I would say that it is a job for people who love it, who love comedy and comedy television and radio and film. And so if you are that person, the best thing to do is to just immerse yourself in it, and then start thinking critically about it as well, not just from the perspective of as a fan, but also think how is this better than that? Why is that one more effective than the other one? Which of these episodes is the most successful? When you start analyzing it like that, thinking about it in that kind of critical way, you start to work out how things are made and how things are written, and that gives you that's essentially the job is turning yourself from a fan into a producer, or someone who watches and someone who makes. Is that it's trying to figure out the difference between those two things. After that, it's a question of you know do it yourself, like I did at university with the radio station and the cinematography society at university. These days, that was 2001. Now I think it's much easier. Probably everyone has phones on their cameras on their phones, and the internet exists, and you're here we are now, Tom, talking. People can do that stuff themselves, and so do it. And then when you start to approach companies looking for jobs, there are lots of entry level positions as runners and so on, and you can demonstrate an enthusiasm and a knowledge and a passion for the genre, and that will get you a very long way.
Well, thank you for that insightful interview. And to wrap it up there, right? So thank you for letting me interview you,
It's been a real pleasure, Tom. Thanks for asking.
and hope you guys have enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed recording it. And I'll see you all next time for another nonsense ramble video about whatever TV show I can think of next. Time or time out. Bye.